last week we were with a group of about 10 rental owners, and we asked them around the topic of AI. We said, how many people are more excited than fearful of AI? And everybody was like, we're ready for it. And I was like, this is the same group of people that 5 years ago thought it was stupid to rent online. E-commerce, right, which is like 25 years old, and it finally has sort of caught up to rental.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Build, the podcast where innovation meets collaboration in the world of construction. We bring together thought leaders and industry experts to explore the cutting-edge ideas transforming construction equipment, supply chains, building materials, and workforce productivity.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by Faro, the revolutionary last-mile logistics platform, redefining how high-value, time-sensitive construction deliveries get done. Need it fast? Need it right? Faro.
Everyone, today we are joined by Kyle Clements, founder and CEO of Quipli, a software platform transforming how equipment rental businesses operate. Quipli combines fleet management, inventory tracking, online bookings, and real-time data insights into a single system, helping operators maximize revenue, streamline operations, and deliver world-class customer experiences. Today, we'll explore how technology is evolving the equipment and rental industry and how operators can leverage data for efficiency and innovation. Kyle, welcome to Beyond the Build.
Scott and JP, thank you for having me. It's fun to be a guest here today. Excited to jump in.
Really cool, because I personally am extremely interested in what you're doing, Kyle. And now learning that you're kind of coming into this with fresh eyes in the sense that you don't come from a background of, direct construction or rental. That's pretty cool. Because that's kind of like you, Scott, where you came from construction, but you knew nothing about tech. Whereas Kyle, you seem to have a good tech background and just saw an opportunity here. And I find it kind of refreshing sometimes when someone who doesn't know the industry comes in and how clearly they can point out sometimes, like, why do you do it that way? Why the heck are you doing this? Like, this makes no sense in the real world. And only, like, there's a saying, fresh eyes see clear. And so I bet we're going to get some of your philosophy or some of the things that you encountered that made you go down this path.
I love technology, AI, rental. That's my background. I'm a technology person who's kind of come into rental, not rental to technology. So, but we have hundreds of rental companies who use our platform and hundreds of thousands of transactions every year. So I still don't know rental super well, but we've learned that, right? That's all we do. We sell software for equipment rental companies. So At some point, you got to figure that out.
Tell us about the genesis. What was Scott would talk about his taking an Uber to a construction site and then realizing they were missing a part and be like, hey, why don't we just Uber the part here? And then bam, light bulb. What was your light bulb moment for you making the rental software that you have?
Yeah, so I didn't even know equipment rental was a phrase 6 years ago. My background, I started my first company in college. I was taking old kayaks and recycling them into dog collars and wallets. A company called Reboat. It lasted all of 9 months and did not work, but I loved building, and that's sort of what I knew I wanted to do. So prior to Quipli, I've spent the last 3 companies building software in the automotive space, and in many ways, automotive is made 10 years ahead or 20 years ahead of equipment rental. So the first one, Zuby, was a telematics company that was acquired by TSD. Second was Clutch, a vehicle subscription service that was acquired by Cox Automotive. And then actually worked at Uber, as you mentioned, Uber, right before their IPO. And I love building companies. I love technology. I like to focus on one vertical in automotive. And after I was leaving Uber, I tried to rent something online in summer of 2020. And that's when e-commerce was becoming really a big uptick because of COVID and everything was shut down. And what I found was the national company I was trying to rent from, it was a terrible online renting experience. And I was like, okay, well, if they're bad, surely the independents have figured something out, right? So I started talking to rental companies, and nobody was really offering the full rental experience online. So I don't know, we started building e-commerce customer websites. So we had about 10 equipment rental companies using Quipli for the full transaction online. And at some point, the customers were like, hey, we've got this outdated legacy ERP system. Can you build the full rental software? And I don't know if we were smart enough or stupid enough to say, yeah, let's do it. And that's what we've been doing for the last it's been 5 years now since we started, and now we're the full system, right? So the one software and equipment rental company needs to run their business end to end, right? So there's a lot of legacy softwares out there. I think there's probably 40 rental management systems out there. I think ours is a little bit different, a little bit more modern, but totally stumbled into this, and this industry has been amazing. Like you talked about, I'm sure you guys know, it gets in your blood. And I'm not second generation, third generation rental company. Didn't grow up in construction. Very much a technology person. Love innovation. But this industry is just so starving for good technology, and it's been very exciting. We can't build stuff enough. I think this narrative that equipment rental people don't want new tech. No, they do. It just they haven't been able to, for whatever reason. This market's been overlooked. So, yeah, stumbled into it just one day trying to rent something online that's turned into this whole thing, and here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, a lot of those legacy companies, I mean, I'll use a code term, but they're still running AS400, right? So those who don't know what that is, remember the Atari? For us that are older, that's what it is. It's bulletproof, right? It houses all your inventory. It houses all your functionality. It's really good to use in a very simple system. But to your point, Kyle, it's like, how are you reaching your customer base? Because we're in this market sector where you have B2B, where you have a construction company, right, that's actually doing multiple jobs. And then you have, let's say somebody wants to do a DIY project, right? Those are two different clients, right? The volume compared to the one-off. And so, how to basically tether that user experience to make it easy, because we're still dealing with, job sites where, let's say I'm building a stadium, right? Or a solar farm, or even the oil refineries. The legacy construction people that are ordering that are still used to, hey, I pick up my phone, I call my rep, and, I can talk the jargon and the slang, and he can say every other word in the sentence. And the rep's like, yeah, I know what Billy needs, right? He needs a telehandler that goes 50 feet. Like, he doesn't have to ask all the questions. He doesn't need a picture. But when you try to basically scale that out to either people that don't understand the equipment industry, or new people that are coming into the equipment industry working for the rental companies. I mean, I could tell you a story when I was a sales rep. It was funny. We were out supposed to be selling the equipment to the contractors, but we didn't know what half of the stuff even did. Like, it's like, here, go drop off a hydrostatic test pump. I'm like, okay, I hope they don't ask me how to use it. Like, how do I use it? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought you do. I was just dropping it off. It's this thing that it's a cat class that someone told me, and the rate was this. And you're like, good luck. And back then we didn't have YouTube videos. There wasn't somewhere to go to, like, say, let's watch a video, see how to start this thing. So you've got this innovation sector where, one, you have a culture of the end user to figure out, like, are they willing to adopt? Because to you, as your point, they're starving for it. And rental is very, very, very slow to adopt new things. They're like trying to turn the Titanic, even though they want to do U-turns in the harbor.
Yeah. So I agree with that, and that has been my experience for 4.5 of the 5 years I've been doing technology in equipment rental space. It seems to me we're actually at a pivot point where, when I was starting, now everybody does online renting. Every most rental companies, it's sort of like, of course we do it, right? But like 2020, 2021, people were like, why would you put your price online? Like, nobody wants to rent online, right? Well, we see 25% of the 500,000 transactions we'll do this year being done online, right? And it's the customer portal, it's texting customers quotes, signing, paying on your phone. That has changed. It was nobody wanted to do it, and now over time, now sort of a natural thing. And the nationals are driving a lot of that. Last week we were with a group of about 10 rental owners, and we asked them around the topic of AI. We said, how many people are more excited than fearful of AI? And everybody was like, we're ready for it. And I was like, this is the same group of people that 5 years ago thought it was stupid to rent online. E-commerce, right? Which is like 25 years old. And it finally has sort of caught up to rental. Now we're in the age of AI and agent, and people are like, we want more. We got to show some of the stuff we're doing. They're like, when does this start? We're ready to use it. So I was, if you look at the last 30 years, very slow to adopt technology, but I do wonder, I'm getting the sense that there is like something has changed in the market. That's the feeling I've gotten. We do this every day, but I don't know if AI has changed that. If people start using ChatGPT and you see it in your personal life, of like the wow moment, like the first time you call an Uber, you're just like, wow, this is the future. I wonder if the advent of ChatGPT being so widely used now by 800 million weekly users, is that making people realize that we're at a stair step shift and a technology shift, and people are pulling innovation forward rather than me pushing it forward. And it just does seem like 2025 going to 2026, there's been a change. I don't know if you guys have seen that at all.
My take is it's going to give them more options, right? Because I look at from the lens of the contractor, right? If I need 2 scissor lifts and a skid steer and an air compressor on one of my job sites, my brain goes to, okay, well, who are the top 5 nationally, right? I know where I can call. I know where I can go and massage rates, right? Because everybody has a contractor rate. And then you look at how many I need, how long you need it. And we start the negotiation process in terms of like, oh, well, if I need 50 of these, I'm not paying $1,000 a month. I'm paying like $600 a month. And you get this rate negotiation because in some sense, rental is like a bank, right? They don't produce anything. They're service-based, right? And usually with service, we had a flame up in one of my branches. It's like we have 3 services, pick 2, right? You want quality, you want speed, you want price. You can't get all 3. So now with the integration of AI, and we see it's progressing. Let's say I'm a traveling contractor and I'm working in a state I don't really know. Well, if I can go to my phone and saying, hey, I need 2 19-foot scissor lifts delivered to my project off of Wilshire Boulevard, find me 3 companies that can deliver me something today and shop the 3 rates that they have so that I can pick an option. Now they don't have to go to the big, gorillas and say, here, let's just call those 5. You have independents that are starting to come up and you're like, wait a second, I'm not stuck with the 5 that I've either used before or I don't like. Now I've got other options. So I think with the integration of AI and the easeability to have more options, the contractor on that side is going to say, I'm not stuck anymore. Let me see what I can do. And it's not me trying to figure out and go to Google and say, who's closest? Did that rental company even exist? It gives you all these options to say, you know what, whoever's your AI agent, okay, pick this one and do me a favor, book it for me tomorrow at 7 a.m. and here's my information. That information then pushes to the independents using the software and says, I got it. I put the reservation in, and then the process starts of the rental company saying, is it on the ready line? Do we need to service it? Does one need to be picked up? And do I stack that on my first delivery or on my second to get it to the job site to the time requested? It's like this whole ecosystem that goes into play.
Yeah. And I think you've sort of hit on something is because, AI is like everybody said, turn on the TV, everything's AI commercial. And it's like AI coffee. It's like, what are we talking about? AI, mattress, everything's AI. And, for some of our competitors, AI, right? And I think what we've started to see is there's two paths, right? And the first path is like the AI ChatGPT wrapper, where you can have a co-pilot or essentially an interface to ask questions, which is very interesting, very powerful. What are my worst 5 categories this month? Who are my top 3 customers tomorrow? That sort of thing. And a lot of rail softwares are going to start rolling that out. We have that. Others going to be doing that. I think that's interesting.
That's very cool.
Yeah. By the way,
like dynamic information.
Yes.
Like real time. That's very cool.
Real time. Effectively think of ChatGPT in your software. I think that's cool. I think the cooler thing is actually the agents. And I think you touched on that, where it's like we think about AI as like workforce or labor or doing work for you. And I would say it's not replacing people. It's not taking people's jobs, but it's doing work that people don't want to do or they don't have time to do in a rental company, right? So I think that is the more powerful thing. So when we think about AI, one thing we're trying to talk to people about is like everyone's going to say from our industry, we're an AI rental software. And it's like, well, are you the ChatGPT thing or are you like actually doing work in a rental company? Some of those examples being like you get a phone call and you need to log a missed rental. Like every rental software has a missed rental component, right? You go in, click 2 buttons and it takes a couple minutes, right? And reality is you don't do it 100% of the time because it's 2 minutes of friction that adds up, and maybe you log half your missed rentals.
Did you say missed rental or MIS or MISSED?
ED, missed rentals,
Yeah,
right? So you want to log.
They couldn't book the rental, and they
Yep.
inside sales rep
Okay.
doesn't even go through the process of logging why. If there's a rate, it was unavailable. They just exit out of the transaction, and then all of a sudden you're like, the phone call didn't even really exist because they picked up a phone and they just X'd out of it, and you're like, well, why didn't you rent them a 26-foot scissor lift if we didn't have any 19s? Like, we have other options.
That's very useful data, as you guys know, for making future fleet decisions, right? Obviously, look at your utilization and your rental history, but what did you miss, and what are rentals you would have had if you had the equipment, right? So, an example of an agent would be that's listening to all your emails, your phone calls, and it's automatically logging those missed rentals for you, right? So that saves you 2 minutes a day. But the more important thing is you're getting 100% data accuracy because you're not having your sales rep forget to because they're doing a thousand things. So that's one example of an agent, right? Another agent could be every time there's a permit pulled in Maricopa County, Arizona, you're notified of who the builder is, their contact information, the project size, and the AI can say, here are the estimated rental needs based on the project scope, right? And you wake up on Monday morning and you're in real time, you now have really hot leads to go as a sales rep to go chase, right? So what I'm trying to say is there's a difference between you prompting the software and saying, what are my 5 best customers today? That's the chat GPT wrapper versus the agents prompting you and doing work and telling you what to do in a sense. And I think that difference is going to be transformational in rental software. So, and that's all happening today. We're seeing that happen today. And I think that's what gets me very excited is I think we really are on the cusp of a revolution in how rental software is deployed and how people use it. And I'm very excited about it. And I don't know if you guys have seen this in your what you guys are doing, but it does feel like AI in some sense is overhyped. And I hate how everyone just says everything is AI, but if you really distill like the use cases of the agents, it is really, I would say, it's a game changer for how rental companies can operate.
Yeah,
It
we've
is, and
had
I
some
think
guests recently that operate in that space. One of our sales tools that we use right now is to train sales folks on the call, where you're cold calling an AI agent that has objectives and personalities, some more pleasant than others, and it's allowing our salespeople to have back to back to back to back sales calls with these virtual agents and learning real world techniques that they can put in place because it feels like they're talking to a real person, and how they overcome objections, how they get their foot in the door, how they're getting someone to stay on the phone versus hang up on them. And that's I was very, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm glad we're using a tool like that because that's another example where I think that kind of where you're finding it's not just plugging in, asking a question. It's something that's interactive, that provides immediate feedback, that's valuable.
For sure. And you got to think about it as labor. It's a person doing work. It's not conscious. I don't believe that at all. But you have to think about it as like a job to be done, your rental company. And I think that's another example there. Coaching, call coaching, that's the future. And when you think about it that way, like this whole thing's gonna look different in 3 years, 2 years, right?
it totally is, and I think you hopefully you would agree with this, is the innovation process, whether it's AI, new software, so on and so forth, it all goes back to one fundamental thing that I think, where even if you're a rental company, a manufacturer, salesperson, and or a contractor, we're all trying to find more time, right? To be more efficient. Labor productivity on an actual construction site is maybe at best 30% of wrench time. You know, when I used to walk projects, we used to try to figure out how to map out porta potties. You're doing a project that you got 1,000 people, like a turnaround, or even 3,500 on a large one. Where you position those porta potties affects your efficiency on the job. When you're doing a high rise in New York, putting a subway on the 14th floor and moving it up as you build creates more productivity because your labor force ain't walking down in Manhattan trying to grab a sandwich and then walking back up and having, I don't know, 15 minutes worth of, rest time. There's little things that you can do. And I think what you're talking about in the evolution of the software is, there's multiple parts. There's the sales piece, and you have companies like Salesforce and try to give the people automation and tools, because that's what it is, to be more effective with capturing data and then more importantly, putting action items to those data. And then from a operational component, with a rental company, you figure out how to be more efficient, right? In rental, you talk about time utilization, you talk about dollar utilization. You want to know, when was the last time this piece with this asset number went out? Because am I getting an ROI on this, or am I getting an ROI on a group of equipment that are similar? Giving them the tools to say, hey, no, we need to rent this one first before this one, so our depreciation model works. Or in a case where, I'll give you a story, I had an inside sales reps that wanted to go in sales, right? But this individual was he was a defensive player. He wasn't offense, and he had the best intentions, right? So you get a customer to call in, and they would say, "Hey, I'm looking for a 6,000 pound reach forklift, and I need it delivered tomorrow morning at 8 a.m." So his helpful mentality would tell the customer, "I don't have a 6,000 pound reach fork here, and I'm not sure I can get it there at 8 o'clock, but let me see what I can do for you." And so the coaching moment, and I was like, that customer just turned two no's and a maybe, right? Imagine that conversation going differently and controlling it and saying, got it, understand, 6,000 pound reach forklift, 8 a.m. Okay. How about this? I've got an 8,000 pound, then I'll help you on the rate for, and I can get it there by 10 o'clock. Could we book that for you? Now you've given them an option, knowing that you have no 6,000 pounds anywhere close. Your first window of delivery is already basically allocated. And now you've just controlled that so that customer doesn't have to hear two no's and a maybe, hang up and say, yeah, let me call you back after I call two more rental companies to see if someone gives me a better answer, right? That innovation for that software to be able to elevate the conversation with the end user, because all they want to do is get that task done. They don't want to hear the noise of why I can't, or like, just give me a solution so I can go back to yelling at my crew or figuring out why that truck is blocking the entrance of our job site. And hopefully that software play will give those individuals that don't think in that mindset, like this individual, he thought he was a sales rep, but he's more defensive, about under promise and over deliver, to somebody that's brand new, that their brain hasn't processed and or they haven't had the coaching to be able to create those solutions, because they're just looking at a screen and going, yep, I don't have any of those sitting here. So, hey, dispatcher, what are we going to do? Can I call you back, Mr. Customer, in like 20 minutes after we figure our shit out? And in this industry, JP, you've seen it, especially in logistics, the urgency is the series of a traffic light. Okay. You don't get to have time, and Kyle, I'll go back to software, right? Where I've got a problem, let me submit a ticket, and we'll get back to you in a week and a half to let you know if we can get to it. If you give a contractor some type of answer like that, dude, they are not calling you back. They're like, a week? My job's going to be over in like 2 days. Like, I don't have time for you. Later, and you don't see them anymore.
Kyle, I wanted your thought, and I mean, Scott, you'll have opinions here too, but something that amazed me, because Kyle, like you, I don't come from a background in construction. So I had a very steep learning curve working with Scott and our customers in Faro. I have a tangential relationship with construction at best. What I was amazed by when I peeked behind the counter visiting some of my customers early on and seeing the system that these guys were using, where they're having to hit tab and use the function keys on their keyboard to put in command prompts and in a very specific sequential order that they just have to memorize, and thinking, my God, how this is insane. I feel like I'm back at my, Mac 2 in 8th grade, playing Oregon Trail when everything is green. It's not even in color.
Hey. That muscle memory.
Oregon Trail is an awesome game. I don't know.
Hey,
That
no, it
was
is.
dope.
No, absolutely no shade on Oregon Trail. Much shade on the rental companies. But the question is, so we feel that there can be a lot of hesitancy to adopt that new technology because of perceived complexity. But for me, when I look at rental, I'm like, man, what they're using now it seems so complex and overly complicated versus new technology. So how are you finding, I guess, what are the misconceptions that you've encountered in that space, and how are you overcoming that?
Yeah, I think first thing I would say is your rental software should not be older than you. Like, and like, it should be, right? Like your iPhone's wasn't built in 1982, right? Like your computer, your TV, none of this was built in 1982, 1992. And I was actually thinking about think about the market share of people who have rental software. This is my gut feeling, so you can correct me, but I would say 90% of the market of people who use rental software is using rental software that was started before 2000. It's most lion's share, 89% of the software market right now is companies that are prior to the Y2K bugs, right? Like,
Yeah. Why
it's
do we think
crazy.
that is? Why? Why do you think?
And I've got an opinion because I used it for 20 years. But Kyle, I'm
I
interested
mean,
on yours.
I've heard your opinions on this many times, Scott, because they think it's like a solid system. It's super secure. You can't hack it. Who cares if you
You
can't hack it?
can't
Who's
make
hacking
a dinosaur fly unless it's a pterodactyl. Okay. You're trying to take, a brontosaurus and saying, "Here, I want to put some wings on you." He's like, "You know how heavy I am? I have a long neck. I'll just grab the tree that way."
So I give you my view. I think it's less about. Okay. I would say there's probably a view that rental companies don't want to change. Like, oh, we love it and it's great. We never. Why would we want cloud-based AI? Like, why would we want that? And I would disagree with that. I think the more I give you from a tech perspective, I think the reality is there hasn't been any new competition, right? So like Quipli is the last 5 years. There's other Quiplis out there, but like, I mean, guys, ask you guys in the last 25 years, what new rental software have entered the market? I mean, there are some, but like they're using the rental man code base. So like there haven't been, right? So why is that? Well, kind of in software investing, right? It's been horizontal software, so like HubSpot, Salesforce, across all these industries, and then vertical software became a thing, right? So you kind of go really Quiply is a vertical software company. We build only in the equipment rental industry, U.S. and Canada, independent. That's all we do. We don't do event rental. We don't do anything else. That's all we do. And what's happened, I think, is these technology entrepreneurs have seen the Ubers of the world where I worked have become so overcrowded with so much money that you've sort of been pushed into these verticals, which you can actually build a really great business. It doesn't look like it's a big TAM, but I think it actually is bigger than it looks. So what's happened is you have people like me who are starting to see these opportunities because of market dynamics and funding, et cetera. And it's never been easier, faster to build software now than it was 5, 10 years ago. So I think it's more of a market function that people are now building vertical companies. Trucking has hit a huge adoption curve and how they built their TMS systems. So I think what's happening is there's Quiplis of the world coming in saying there's an opportunity to build really great software, and we're now doing it, and we're seeing people switch. So I think one of the misconceptions is that rental companies don't want new technology. They want to be stagnant. They want to stay on the old stuff. I thought that for a long time. What we're seeing now is like they really want to change. They want the new stuff. The challenge is the perceived switching cost now, right? So now that we have all the functionality, the features, it does look like the future. It's the perceived switching cost. And, we've gotten really tight on that, but it's really the historical data. How do you migrate that over from these black and green screens to the cloud-based system? And then the training, right? And we've gotten really good at that. We do the whole process in less than 30 days. My view is how do we get that to 2 days? And I think that's something we're working on as a company. Like, how do you make it seamless? Because I think that will shift people from the legacy to the new. So I think there's a demand for it. I think it's more of a function. There hasn't been any alternatives for a long time.
Kyle, yeah, you're spot on. So that was the biggest thing. So the technology continues to advance, and the companies that, to your point, they want it, and they've been trying to get it for the last 2 decades. They have, but you're dealing with two different cultures within one sphere, right? You have the technology side, which let's call a condescending term, right? It's kind of like we just said that the nerd door's over here. We have this new crazy good
All
stuff.
right. Nerd door over here.
And then you've got the people that work in the dirt or are not familiar with that. And they're like, you don't even know us. And this is in the same company. They're like fighting each other, right? Because to your point, like when I looked at my teams and my dispatchers, we still ran a 4-monitor system. We had the emails in the top corner. We had a rental man screen in the left corner. We had a TMS system in the bottom corner. Then we had another one, and our eyes just moved. We had to have so much data. Like if you didn't have a Christmas tree sitting on your desk, you were behind the times, right? So you have this culture dynamic of people that are familiar with their Ataris, right? It's muscle memory. The first time I actually went to Win System and off the green screen, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're on like Rental Man 15. Like you've been on Rental Man 6. And then they gave me the web interface. I hated it. I'm like, I don't want to click another tab. I don't want to drop. Like I can go so much faster with my fingers in the muscle memory pad. Like I could blow doors at anybody on a web-based interface. I'd be done with a contract before they click down to their second box. So you have this culture dynamic within the industry that is familiar with how they use the system, and you're asking them to hate change. It's like grandma giving an iPhone and she doesn't know how to get her media in her pictures. She's like, my Polaroid, I know how it spits out and I'm good. And then you're like, but grandma, you can't share that with anybody. She's like, I'll mail it. And I'm like, watch this. It's not until you get them to use a couple of times, then they don't wanna go back, but you're dealing with an industry that has legacy, employees that have been around for a long time, and they're not going anywhere.
That's been a challenge on the grandma with the iPhone. I texted my grandma on Christmas last year a picture of our family by the tree, and she responded 3 days ago. So was that 10 months later? I was like "What is going" She's 93, I love her. I was like, "How did you even
Uh,
think to respond?" But I think there's, like, a real cultural inertia, right? Because, like, if you've been on a server-based program and it's all hotkeys, like, people, love that system. It's people don't like change generally, and that's what they're used to. But the younger generation, they've come in and they're like, "What the hell is a hotkey?" And, like, "Why is it black and green? Why is there a server room in the closet? When I do my whole business, my whole life is on my phone. I order an Uber, and I can do a self-driving car on my phone now with Waymo," and, like so what we're seeing is, like, there are people who still want the rock solid legacy software, and there's a younger group of people who are like, "I'm not starting on this," right? And I think what we've even seen some of the rental companies who have adopted to the more modern system is it's been a huge for recruiting people. Like, if you want younger, energetic people and you wanna train them in 1 day, not in
yeah.
4 months.
Look at this cool, easy tool that helps you do a good
Well,
job.
and the leadership team has to get on board. I mean, before we had scorecards, I couldn't tell you what our OEC&A, like our not available equipment was. Now you have a card with a button and it tells you all your information. So the leadership at the branches that are doing it have to also be on board to say, let's do this. Because like what we deal with in terms of the outside hauling piece is we're trying to show rental companies like actually third party outside hauling is not a bad term. It's not a, ooh, black stain on your P&L. Like you can actually make money when your delivery covering at best is 75% with internal resources. Let's flip that over, increase the amount of opportunity you can give for sales, and your delivery recovery goes up because you can transfer the cost and your customer just wants it faster. But yet at the same time, they're just like, nope, this is a bad metric. Nope, we've done it this way. This is proven. If I give them all these additional tools and they don't know how to use it or they break it, or I invest in tools that stay in the drawer, that's not a good return on my investment. And I watched that as I went across the pond to different companies where they had some great software, but what I was talking about of what we did in the States and how much fleet we'd move and how we do it, in some cases, you would have thought I discovered fire. I was like, Wait, what do you mean you don't know how to transfer fleet and you're not using it?" And I would go into the existing software system and I'm like, "You have this functionality right here." But in their mind, it's kind of like getting in a new car and it's got 35 different functions. You're
Yep.
like, I
And you just
just
use the
know where
radio.
the
That's
gas,
all.
the brake, the steering wheel, and the gears are. Your other 31 items, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. And if it's not done intuitively, right, I'll get in a new rental car and I'll be like, I'll sit there for 10 minutes trying to figure out how to turn the air conditioning on. It's like, yeah, I don't think cars are very well designed from that perspective. They try to do their own in-house technology. It doesn't really work that well. They've sort of given up on that a little bit, but I mean, you just nailed it, right? The software has to be easy and intuitive, and like every software is better than ever. And like even this program we're using for this podcast, you click a button, it works. I mean, that's what it needs to be like. It needs to be one click, onboard yourself within 5 minutes, sort of thing, and train yourself very fast. And if it's not that, that's where adoption slows down, right? That's where the people are like, "Why are we doing this? Let's go back to the old way," right? So there is a friction of going from switching softwares, but you have to make the data migration really easy, and the training needs to be so intuitive. You don't even need to train people; they just know how to use the software. So that's the important of like user experience, user design as you build software.
That's really cool that you bring up literally 2 points that I've been jotting notes for like kind of follow-ups, and you've already hit 2 of them. You talked intuitive and migration. Those were 2 things that as we were talking, like, all right, how do these work? Are there speaking on the intuitiveness to begin with? Have you kind of, I mean, I guess, where are you mimicking, or what do you feel is intuitive about what your software is doing? Because you're right, adoption of technology is so heavily reliant on how complex or easy it is to use. If it's easy to use, that's how you get quick adoption. So where have you had either pitfalls or big successes with making intuitive systems?
I think on the pitfalls is like assuming that we have the answers. Like, oh, like I know how a rental company runs. Like, let me give you the workflow, right? And the good news is because I didn't come from this industry, there's like a huge sense of humility. That I don't know what I don't know, and most of it is like what I don't know. So, like that was actually a blessing. I think what we've done well is when we spend time with customers. As every single time I visit a rental company, every single time I learn something new about how they operate, but also how their software is being used. And you look at it, and it's not always in a positive way. It's always like, wait, you're doing that screen, and why are there 5 buttons there? Okay, that should be one button, right? And so I would just say it's really spending time with customers, and that sounds like maybe obvious and overstated in many ways, but you just constantly iterate. And obviously with cloud-based software, we do new feature releases every 2 weeks, so it's really a game of inches. You just constantly trying to make it 1% better every 2 weeks, and over 5 years, 10 years, you can build an awesome system. But we really believe just trying to get 1% better every day. And the good news is with our feature releases, we're doing that every 2 weeks, and it's been customer driven. And going back to why I'm excited about this space is there is so much interest in building great software. Like people don't shut us out of the room. They're like, yes, come here. Let me show you how to make it better. It's a very engaged audience. And again, I think it goes back to like, I feel like they have been starving and they're just excited that you can build stuff fast. And, it's again, I would just say spending time with customers. If I'm ever bored or like, what should we do as a company? It's like, let's go visit a customer because every time you learn something.
And then, so what about that? What about migration then on the second half of that? Because yeah, wouldn't it be easy if you have like, Rental Man, API, and Quibly and just bam, just
I would say that'd be honest, like that's been a challenge, right? So, uh, it's hard to get some of this data. On average, we launch customers within 30 days, which I think is pretty good. Um, we're as a company, we had meetings about this week. What would it take to have the launch process 2 days, right? You sign up on a Tuesday, you send your data on a Wednesday. By Thursday, it's all loaded in the system and historical data. Because one of the big challenges when people switch is like all my reporting starts at 0 now, right? Because unless you can get the historical data in. So we haven't fully solved that part right now, but that's something that we're trying to solve in the next 6 months is really go from 30 to 2 days, right? And get the historical data. That's been the biggest a blocker for us. When people think about switching from legacy to new, the number one reason they have heartburn is migration of historical data. So as a company, we're taking that very seriously. And the good news is other industries have solved that. So one of our salespeople, he joined the company recently, but he did internet banking in the 1990s. He's 53 years old. And that was the big thing, right? So all these companies he's been at in different industries is the migration from legacy to new has been the hardest part. So as a company, we're now taking that very seriously. And we really think we can get that process down to 2 days.
So you're kind of like saying like the IRS from getting off of Cobalt and actually into something like relevant to this century.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it's not the sexy stuff. I love to talk about the agents and all the other stuff, but like the reality is, why do people use ERP systems and rental software? It's a ledger. It's a general ledger of your core health of your business, and you have to get that data. You can't start over as a company. You can't go from day 0 all of a sudden. You got to be able to move that over.
And then what they do in the back end is they create pivot tables and refresh files and things through Excel so they can make fleet decisions of where to allocate, why, follow the trends. When I look at disruption, because that's what I say Faro is, right? We're a progressive disruptor. And what we have to identify there, and Kyle, you probably agree with this, is the product is only going to take you so far if you're not just hyper-focused on the user experience. Like we can't build for something. We got to almost like work in reverse because we could sit here and say, hey, let's build this new mousetrap and it's fantastic. And we can see all the holes because we're looking at it from a top down and we can see the whole perimeter. These people are inside the maze. Their walls are limited to what they can see and feel, right? So when we're doing that, we have to listen and then build the lanes with guardrails. And then my curiosity is when you're talking to the rental companies, rather than just giving them a lane, right? A feature set, something they can do, how often do you sit at the intersections? Because what I mean by that is we can do a lot of stuff that's fantastic at the front of the house, reservations, contract writing, dispatch flow, but then you got a backside of the house, service. How does that data communicate to the shop that says, no, I need to service this piece first, so it's got to go here because the front of the house, all they're doing is filling a funnel. Now I got to do is in the back house, sort all the marbles to figure out which one's relevant and then put those marbles so they spit out in the right order. How do you guys tackle those intersections between different points of the business while creating guardrails that people are willing to adopt?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think that's part of why people buy rental software. It is designed only for equipment rental companies, and it touches your whole business, right? So you have the e-commerce storefront and the customer portal and the texting customers from the software, and you have the inventory management, you have service and repair and dispatch and payments and accounting, and it all plugs into Rouse analytics and Happen for GPS and TaxJar for taxes and Google Maps for route planning. And I think of rental software as the control point. It's the first software you turn on in the morning and last at night, and then that's like your hub, right? And the good news about being cloud native and starting the last 5 years is it all is seamlessly integrated, right? You're not bolting on 10 different products with like a Frankenstein sort of system. So I think that is the intersection's actually been easier to solve. The challenge has been like, all right, if you're going to do dispatch and service repair and payments and accounting and everything I just said, the 10 vectors, you have to go really deep also. And for a company with limited resources, like every company has limited resources, that's been the challenge for us, is actually being able to do all those things across those 10 dimensions and go really deep, right? Because the largest companies need all of that fully. So that's been more of the challenge, is actually going deep. And I think that just takes time as you kind of grow as a company. You just continue to chip away the 1% sort of thing. That's my view, at least.
What do you see as the next step, if you're even looking years and years ahead in the future for your product? And forgive me if this already is in the works or if it already is happening, because I'm not completely versed with all the minutia of what you do. But some of the things that we've talked with other guests about are logistics integrations, where you integrate your delivery solutions within one system, or at least plug into another, or with telematics and service, where when a unit needs to go down for maintenance, or the status of every unit, how many hours it's run, what its last service looked like, parts that it needs, and being able to order those and see real time, the estimate of delivery of a part or completion of a service, all of that kind of encompasses the other operational side of the rental experience.
Yeah, so like the next few years roadmap, I think the meat and potatoes is the 1% stuff, like a little bit deeper on parts inventory, a little bit deeper on service repair, a little bit deeper on dispatch. We have a lot of integration partners. We just launched Rouse this week, actually. We announced that publicly. So we're going to continue to do more integration partners, but a lot of it's like we got the core system. Just go a little bit deeper, and our customers have given us several years of roadmap. We know what we need to do. We're just trying to go faster in velocity. So and a lot of it is just like listening to customers, blocking and tackling, building a software company, and that is the work. At the same time, AI is like the thing that is like the scariest thing and also the most exciting thing. And I think we don't know how it's going to play out in the next 5 years. There's a lot of different scenarios that are really great for the rental softwares and also really bad. Like, what if you just have agents running your business and you don't even need a rental software, right? I think that is one view I think is unlikely, but I would just say we're also at the same time with all the blocking and tackling on the core software is thinking about where are there scenarios where agents can do work for rental companies, really, because you think about how do rental companies win, as you guys know, the independents, they serve the customer well. They're very responsive. They get to yes fast. They answer the call any time of day. They make it work, right? And they hustle, right? So how does rental software empower rental companies to do more of that, right? So I give you the example of logging missed rentals automatically. We have that functionality now. So that's 2 minutes, right? That's like your Subway example. Like just these 2-minute wins can add up to now all of a sudden you have an extra hour in your day to go spend time on the job site with your customer. So as much as we got to do the core system stuff, which we're doing, I'm excited about these incremental wins that, like, in my ideal world, you spend less time in your rental software. Instead of spending 3 hours a day in your rental software, you spend 15 minutes in your rental software because it just works and you're out in the field. So I think that is my hope for the future, is rental software becomes more invisible. It just allows the rental companies to do what they love and what they're best at, which is serve customers. And I think that's what excites me for the next few years.
One more. I'm at the risk of being doom and gloom. Sorry, Scott, I'll let you jump in right after this. One of the patterns that I've seen, again, coming from outside equipment rental and learning a lot about it, is as soon as a smaller mom and pop shop, maybe they have a few locations, a dozen locations, even 20, 30, even 100 locations, as soon as they get successful, we have seen just an age of acquisition these last 5 years where, okay, United's gonna grab them, or, United just grabbed it was United that ended up with, um, not Herc, I've already forgotten their name now.
Herc solidified the purchase of H&E. That's what I'm talking
H&E,
about.
that's them. So,
That
and
was
H&E
Herc.
was huge. So they
Right.
acquired them, and then we have Equipment Share that's becoming a behemoth, and they're making acquisitions, Sunstate and, Sunbelt as well. Sunbelt is massive. I guess, so what I'm getting at is, do we think we're going to be able, from your perspective, to convert those behemoths? Or is it gonna be a circumstance where, we're just gonna continue to see this perpetuation of acquisition where it might actually hinder progress if these larger companies keep absorbing these smaller ones that are making technological advances in the right direction, but then being absorbed by the dinosaur that's not gonna fly?
Well, I think, to give the Nationals some credit, they have driven most of the innovation in the space, I would say. They're the first ones to do customer portals and online renting, and they have millions, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of IT budget to drive innovation. So I would say the industry, the Nationals actually do a pretty good job at driving innovation. I think they're not perfect, but they try, and they are pushing the envelope. On the topic of consolidation, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I think these things take longer than they think, and we see the ARA stats. When 2% of their members got acquired last year, et cetera. That's not nothing, but I'm personally not super worried about it, to be honest. We have looked at it. And the reality we also see is these guys sell their company. We had a Quipli customer sell their company to Sunbelt last week. And what happens is we've seen probably, I would say once a month at least, maybe twice a month, we get a call from someone who said, started my rental company. I sold to United. My 2 years or so is up. I'm starting my next company and I have cash. And they come back. So that's where I started the conversation with rental gets in your blood. These guys come back and they do another company and a third company. So I'm still very optimistic in independence. I don't think they're going away. I think there's a niche they serve. There is consolidation. I think we'll see, but I think there's going to be room for the independents for a long time. That's my view, at least.
There is. And JP, like I said, experience on other podcasts, being part of like 250 of them, acquisitions. I've seen the movie multiple times. I'm in the movie, right? There is those synergies. Like when the largest acquisition between RSC and United happened, there was a strategic reason why that happened with the total control systems and some of the innovation that RSC had that had to be integrated, and it accelerated, the growth model. One of the things, Kyle, you said ever so slightly was servicing your customer. Like what we do here at Faro, it's like we're never really trying to innovate to service our needs. Always service the needs of your customer. So when I'm talking to a rental company or yes, I'm thinking about the rental company, but I'm thinking about how does my software, how does my service elevate their customer experience, right? Go one notch above your target and figure out what's influenced your target's behaviors. And that's where I think the real gold starts to happen. And it's a trickle effect, right? Between the rental company serving the contractor. Okay, well, then who does the contractor serve? It's like, oh, well, the contractor serves their client. Yes, but there's an intermediary. The contractor serves their employees, their labor. Their labor then services the client. Like there's this whole effect that goes on. So as we continue to innovate software, think about who the end user is and saying, why would this individual change the way they do things? And I think that's where that gold starts to shine brighter. And I think that's what we try to do here at Faro. It's going like, what you guys are doing with your software, it's going like, how do we make the experience for everybody involved in the movie that they walk out of there and going, I'm glad I spent the last 2 hours of my life here. Not, I got through this one and I hope I don't have to come back for another one for another couple weeks because that's really sucked to your rental experience.
Yeah, it's the whole value chain. as you talked about. And, I think the best rental companies I know, they ask themselves the same question every morning is how can I be of service to others? And I think, for Faro and for Quipli, as we serve the rental companies, we have to ask ourselves the same question. How can we serve the rental company? How can we serve the end renter? Right. And I think when you come from that place of humility and trying to serve others, I think that's why the rental companies have been successful, right? And that's why I love this industry. I'm from the automotive. You don't get that same feeling as you get in rental, right? So it's very much community-based industry. And how do you serve others? That's what I get excited about. You start the conversation. I'm not from the industry, but that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm going to continue to stay here. It's just a very fun industry to be in.
Yeah, that's to your point. There's a difference between relationship and transaction. And some industries are very transactional, and other industries are very relationship. And rental is that relationship. And not picking on auto, but auto is about sell the car, right? Sell the part, get the transaction, and once you have the car, I probably won't talk to you for 4 years, right? Rental's not like that. Rentals, you need it, great. Did it get there? Call back. How is everything working? Because I know I'm going to have to pick this thing up eventually, rinse it, repeat it, and then get it probably to you again. So this is kind of like a marriage, and it's a relationship that you're not going away, and hopefully I'm not, and we can flourish together rather than, got that out of my driveway.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop. I feel like on one hand, we've covered a lot of ground, but on the other hand, I also feel like we've barely scratched the surface of all the things that are happening in your world, Kyle. But really appreciate you being on, and maybe we'd be able to have you on again in the future so that we can dive even deeper and get an update on where Quipli's at and how it's growing. And we look forward to kind of tracking its future success.
Thank you for having me on. It's been fun. I feel like time went by fast, and always happy to chat. I think it's changing faster than ever. So it's fun to talk about. And like I said, it's an awesome industry to be in. I appreciate everything you guys do for this industry.
Well, everyone, that is a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Build. We took away some real valuable lessons and insights, and I hope that you did as well.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would ask that you subscribe so you can never miss an update. If you're a thought leader looking to innovate in the construction industry, let's talk. We'd love to connect and hear your thoughts.
You can find Beyond the Build on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, plus anywhere else that you listen. And if you'd like to learn more about how Faro is changing logistics in the construction industry, please visit our website at faronow.com.
Once again, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, be humble, serve others, and make an impact.